Oh, I got an interesting video for you guys today. This is Tony. Hope you're all doing well. We're going to get into a number of things in this video. Talk a little bit about science. We're going to talk about this interview with Timothy Alberino over on the Deep End podcast, the most recent edition, because he's been actually making the rounds. Timothy Alberino's been making the rounds. He's been on a number of shows of recent. Michael Knowles, I think he was on the Deep End twice. So he's getting out there for sure. And what's interesting is he agrees with, it seems like we agree on a lot of stuff, actually. It's kind of interesting. We're going to get into that in this video. What's interesting also is I sort of left off on my other channel about John Darby. So we're going to get into him as well, how he inherited one of the most haunted castles on the planet Earth. And he is also sort of the godfather of Revelation Protestant theology. Kind of weird. Why is this guy inheriting the most haunted place on Earth? And he's also the guy that sort of came up with the whole Left Behind sort of theology. We'll get into that. Where they got their money from. Kind of weird. And why I think the devil actually was behind that. Because there's a certain family that was behind it. Let me show you that. We'll just show you this really quick. Look at the name. Does that name look a little familiar? That was who funded him. And John Darby, people in his own lifetime, 1830, who were actually doing seances in this castle that he also inherited. Made the place the most haunted place on planet Earth. We'll get into that, like I said. But we're going to get into also this interview, talking about a lot of the stuff that he referred to in this interview. It's kind of interesting, actually, some of the stuff he was talking about. We're going to talk about how the Book of Enoch was directly referred to by Jesus' own mission statement. His own mission statement was literally the script of the Book of Enoch about him. He's saying what the Book of Enoch is talking about when it says the Son of Man is referring to me. And we'll get into actually other places where he clearly referred to the Book of Enoch and how the Book of Enoch, and of course, this is interesting. I didn't really mention this on the other video, but Timothy Alberino talks about how the first Book of Enoch, the Ethiopian version versus the Slavonic, which is the second Book of Enoch, you have the second Book of Enoch, the third Book of Enoch, how the first Book of Enoch is the one that you can really bank on. It's the one, that's the words he used, was actually written by Enoch, which I agree with him on that. The second and third Book of Enoch were likely not written by Enoch because they have signs that they were made much later. And so we'll get into that a little bit as well. But let's just play a little bit of this.
In First Enoch, you have the parables. And the parables are... It's a prophetic experience that Enoch has. He's dreaming, by the way. He doesn't go anywhere. People have a misconception that he went up to heaven. No. He's dreaming. He says so in the parables. He's dreaming, and he has these dreams that he records. And the dreams, much of the parables have to do with the Son of Man. That is a title. It's not a description like in Daniel. Daniel saw one who had the appearance of a son of man.
So he talks about how, as you can see there, about the only book, apocryphal, actually pseudepigraphical book, that refers to Jesus as the Son of Man, of course not by name, but referring to the Messiah, is the Book of Enoch, not even Daniel, right? So when Jesus is walking the earth, literally calling himself Son of Man all the time, he's referring to saying, hey, bro, I like the Book of Enoch. You may want to read it. That's basically what he's saying. Okay, that's literally what he's saying. And of course, for some reason, no one seems to know this, or not very many people at least. And of course, then he goes on Mount Hermon, and he's talking to Peter, and he says, Peter, you are the rock, and on this rock, the one I'm standing on, I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. Of course, on the Mount Hermon is where the Watchers came down in the Book of Enoch. It's said that there is a gateway to the netherworld, as you would say, the Pan's Grotto, right? The god Pan. It was a little bit later on. But of course, it's referring to the watchers coming down on this mountain. And Jesus is saying, I conquered this, is what he's saying when he stands on there. So his entire ministry was based on this book that for some reason was banned or removed from all of Europe, most of the world, and for some reason way off in Ethiopia, where apparently Vatican or whoever couldn't get to it, whoever it was that got rid of it, it was seemingly still there, right? It was seemingly, and of course it says right in the text, this is for a remote generation. Of course, then it was discovered again, rediscovered, I guess you would say, in Ethiopia by, I can't remember who his name was, but he found it. I think it was it was a while ago. It was it 200 years ago? It was a little while ago. He found it over there in Ethiopia. I think it was in the 1800s or something like that. And that's when it was brought forth again. All of a sudden for a remote generation, which is the one we're in currently, right? So it's just weird, kind of weird how all that stuff happened. You have here, he also says some other things. And this, I agree with quite a bit of the stuff that he says. I agree with his understanding of sort of the gods. I think he calls them the elder race, small g gods. I'm referring to angels, as a lot of people would call them. Angels being, the term angel is not even a classification of being. Angel means messenger. You could be an angel. Matter of fact, the word evangelical has the word angel in it. You're a messenger of God's gospel. Okay? It's funny how no one seems to know this, but an angel is not a being. It's a job title, like postman. I'm the postman of Scripture, you know. I'm an evangelical, right? It's kind of funny how people call themselves things and they don't even know what the word means. So these beings were created somewhere in a divine council up in the heavens, and they fell. I've talked about that before and I think when you look at the Egyptian pantheon, I think you may see sort of how they looked, because the drawings of the Egyptian pantheon look very similar to the description of the divine beings or divine council in Revelation around the throne, where they have heads of animals, like a bull's head or a head of a bird or a man's head. And you'll notice with a lot of the Egyptian pantheon, they'll have human-looking beings with birds' heads or animal heads or whatever. So I think that actually might be a fair representation of how they originally looked when they fell. And so he actually, apparently he understands a lot, and he actually thinks they are physical corporal beings, which I think so as well, which is interesting. So we actually agree on a lot of stuff. Probably not everything, of course, but so here, let's play this clip. He's talking about how important Enoch is to New Testament.
This is what's informing the writers of the New Testament as they write about who Jesus is. How do they know? And by the way, I think we said this last time I was on your show, and forgive me for repeating content here, but Jesus had various messianic titles that he could have used to describe himself.
And he picked
My name is Whitney Allen. I'm a widow.
He picked an ad. He picked an ad, dude. Yeah, I'm sorry. This video actually gets quite a bit of good ads. So I could play like 20 seconds and it'll have an ad. It's really kind of frustrating. Or let's play a little bit more.
He could have referred to any number of messianic titles from the Old Testament, and yet the one he uses by far the most to refer to himself is the definitive title, the Son of Man.
Exactly. And so it's very integral to the New Testament, yet no one seems to know this. And like I pointed that out when the whole Wes Huff thing happened. I did a video and it actually didn't go as viral as my usual videos do, but I talked about, actually I had two of them. One of them did kind of go viral. One went to 100,000, I think, and then the other one only went to like 36,000. But I think I deleted the one with 100,000 though, probably. I don't know. Hopefully not. But so I talked about the whole Wes Huff thing. Wes Huff doesn't believe the Book of Enoch's inspired. He doesn't think that it's from Enoch. He doesn't actually think Enoch wrote the Book of Enoch, first Enoch even. Now, I can understand him saying that about Enoch 2 or 3, but not Enoch 1. Enoch 1, and this is the problem I have with historians, and not all historians, but certain ones, modern ones particularly, where they cherry pick things from the past. And when they date books, it's kind of like this very negative, pessimistic, I don't believe until you show me evidence kind of attitude. Like something will be claimed to be written by a certain author, and they'll just automatically assume it's not true, particularly if there's any miracles in it especially, or if it predicts anything that already happened a little bit later. So if it predicts something, well, clearly, you probably heard that, clearly it couldn't happen because no one could predict anything. This is kind of their secular mindset. So I really don't agree with that. They also cherry pick historical books. If you look at Pliny, you look at Tacitus, Flavius Josephus, they'll just pick what they like. And if they don't like it, they'll just say it's myth. Like, I remember Timothy Alberino. He's the one I used to reference regarding the Spanish conquistadors and these writings. I think it was him and what's his name? Why is my mind brain? Gen 6 Productions. Whoever's on there with him, I can't remember his name. Steven something. I think it's Steve. I can't remember. But at any rate, so they were talking about the Spanish conquistadors, all these historical books written around the 1600s, and they would talk about giants in them, right? But of course, modern day historians, they'll just cherry pick out what they liked. Well, obviously there's no giants, so we'll just keep that part out. You know what I mean? Like they'll just put everything else in there, and then they'll call these historians professional historians. They'll be like, well, yeah, Flavius Josephus, professional historian, Tacitus, professional historian. Yet they'll reject things they said. That doesn't make any sense. It's illogical, but that's what they do. So, of course, so let's get into some other stuff here. This is interesting. Let's just play this one real quick.
Mysticism, the Book of Enoch is foundational to the 66 books of the Bible. And again, I'm going to add a caveat. The earliest portions of the Book of Enoch, Book of the Watchers, and the Parables. Now,
so it's really interesting because he thinks it's integral to the 66 books. I think especially the NT. The New Testament, definitely 100%. With the OT, I would say, yeah, exactly. I would agree as well on that. But I mean, it's more obvious with the NT. Actually, it is more obvious, even though you would think the way pastors talk, you would think it was the exact opposite. But it is actually more obvious, at least to me. Now, he talks here about the gods, and this is what I was referring to. He calls them the elder race, which I think is interesting because he believes they're created beings just like us. They're not spirits. I think that's 100% correct. I think the whole concept of angels being spirits came from Gnosticism originally, because Gnostics believe that you can't be in the physical body and be pure. So obviously when we get glorious bodies in the resurrection, I don't think they're spirits. I think they're physical bodies of light, probably, at least according to some pseudebiographical texts, like the Book of Adam and Eve or First Adam and Eve. They talk about us literally glowing, which, of course, scientists have shown that actually we still do glow, just very, very, very low glow. You can look it up. There's some science out there showing that we actually do glow. It's very, very faint, though. It's hard to detect without certain instruments, but it's just interesting to think about, though. So he talks here about the gods. Check this out.
And there will be no end to that kingdom. And what has been obliterating the earth? Cataclysm. What brought the empire of the gods to an abrupt end in the antediluvian world? Cataclysm. What is the sign that cataclysm is coming? The sign, and this is dipping back into Cydonia, the sign that cataclysm is coming, the sign of the Suntelia, basically on an equinox or solstice, if you're in a...
And we're going to get into that more later, because he talks about the zodiac, and he talks about these 1,000-year periods to where you have this cataclysm event. And he says that we're actually entering into that time right now, which is interesting because I was coming to the same conclusion from a completely different route. where I talk about 500-year onas and how we just moved from the red dragon to the white dragon, and how the last time it happened was 500 AD, and when it occurred, there was a massive cataclysm, super volcano, in 536 AD, which we'll get into a little bit later. But from what I understand, I think he does agree with this whole concept of the Hesiod theogony regarding sort of the genealogies of the gods, which is started with the primordial gods like Gaia, and that led into the Titans and more than one generation. And then it comes down to where then they mated with humans, and then you have the demons, as you would call them. And you have the elemental spirits, which I think are a class of demons as well. So a lot of people just assume this has nothing to do with Scripture. It doesn't relate to the Scriptures whatsoever, but actually it does. And you can see it in some texts, but it's hard to see because the English, when they translated it, it sort of removed it. And there's actually places in the Old Testament where it'll literally mention a God's name, a specific God's name. And in the text in English, they'll just completely erase it. You won't even see it. An example of this sort of would be Psalm 89:10. And if you actually look at the text, let's look at various translations because, let me back it up. I think, here we go. So this is not 89:10. What is this? Oh no, this is, okay. This is from the last, I went through a number of things in the last video. Let me see. I think it's over here, actually. Yeah, here it is. You crushed Rahab like one of the slain. With your strong arm, you scattered your enemies. And you can see here in the New Living Translation, they actually showed some of what was in the ancient Greek. You crushed the great sea monster. You scattered your enemies with your mighty arm. Now, my researcher thinks this is referring to a particular constellation and referring to an event that was in the stars during that time. And I'm not sure of the veracity if that's true or not, but there are things like that in Scripture. We saw it in Revelation 12 with the great red dragon. That is shown in the constellations. We saw it back in 2017. We saw it at the birth of the Messiah in 3 BC. And I'll actually show you that in a little while. But the fact is, these things are in Scripture. Particularly in Psalms, you'll see the divine council mentioned. You'll see certain, in the ancient languages in Hebrew, or maybe in the Greek Septuagint, in the Greek, you'll see gods mentioned, but then when they translate into English, they just remove it. Like, for example, Jonah was not swallowed by a whale. He was swallowed by a Cetus. And there's actually a constellation with a Cetus. Let me show you that. Cetus. He was swallowed by a Cetus, not a whale. Okay? And you'll have drawings of this mythological creature. Here it is. It was not a whale. It doesn't say whale in the ancient languages. It says a Cetus, which is a mythological creature. Again, we're talking historians. They don't believe in it because they don't see it. I don't see it with my eyes. I don't believe it. What if the thing's extinct? You know what I mean? Like, what if it was something back during the time of the dinosaurs? You have also, there's like a ton of passages like this. I mean, I could keep going on and on. There's one about the elements in the New Testament. It's not referring to the elements. Passage, elements. I'm trying to remember what it sound. I'm trying to remember how the text went exactly. No, okay. Subject to the elements. I think that's what it was. Subject to the elements. Yeah, here we are. Where was this at? Galatians 4:3. Okay, let's go look up Galatians 4:3. Okay. Subject to the elements. It's actually referring to elemental spirits. Okay. It's not referring to elements like air, water, wind, or something like that. It's actually literally referring to elemental spirits. Because in that time, the Galatians believed in elemental and followed elemental spirits. They were a classification of Damien. Okay. Okay, where is the verse? Here we go. Okay, even though we were children in bondage, under the elements, the elemental spirits of the world, not the elements of the world. So it's just kind of funny how they don't translate it properly, so you can't even get the original context of what was being said. And this is like I mean, I've shown this numerous times. There's a lot of, I don't want to keep going. There's a lot of this stuff, a lot. So at any rate, so there's that. Now I get into the whole flat, of course, Earth thing over on the other video. So go check that one out if you want to, because he actually talks about that as well. I'm not going to talk about it in this video. He mentions Rob Skiba, which is interesting. Because of course he did research into giants and things of that nature as well, which is interesting. And I wasn't friends with Rob Skiba, but I was friends with his friends. I was friends with his friends. His friends were my friends, I guess you would say. And some of the people I work with today were actually friends with him and working with him at one time, way back. The guys that work on the game, JIL Games, were working on Noah VR, or Apocryphal Genesis is another name we're going to call it. That game, the guys that are over that, Tony, his name's Tony like mine, he worked with Rob way back like 8 years ago or something on a game, but it was a different game. And they basically shelved the game. But so I knew some of the people, and of course, Rob would pass information over to me from them, like that he liked what I was doing on my videos. And I said, well, yeah, I like some of the stuff you're doing too. So we were kind of like doing this little communication between our friends or something. But I never actually interviewed the guy. I don't think I ever was on a video with him even. But yeah, at any rate. So go check out my other video if you want to see that. But I wanted to get into this whole thing about the cataclysm. And this is interesting. He talks about this. He talks about things being encrypted in Scripture, which is true. There's also higher meanings encrypted in Scripture. We've talked about that before. But that's different than probably what he's referring to here. Check this out. He's talking about the zodiac, I think, in this one. Yeah, here we go. And he's talking about the zodiac, and he's talking about these 1,000-year and these cataclysms happening. And it's really interesting how it seems to relate to stuff I've said. Check this out.
Encrypted in the Scriptures, you can find the zodiac, references to the zodiac. And I've been discovering many. And I've done some videos in my community about, I have a series called The Zodiac in the Bible. I've done 2 parts on it. So, and some of the stuff is not in Sidonia. After realizing this from Flynn's work, it just started occurring to me, wait a minute. Or I'd be reading the Bible like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
This is a reference to the Suntelia, which is a 1,000-year period of cataclysmic transition marked on the zodiac.
Aren't we in that right now?
We're in a Suntelia right now.
Does the Essene?
Okay. He gets into the Essene calendar, which is interesting with the Essene calendar, because I think a lot of people that study the calendar don't understand it properly. And actually, I will get into that a little bit in this video, because the original calendar is in the Greek Septuagint. Flavius Josephus references it. A lot of people reference it. Theolophilus of Antioch, one of my favorite theologian, he references it, the time frame we're really in. And what they tell us we're in is not it. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But so a lot of people that try to research the calendar don't understand it properly. But the whole 1,000-year thing is easy to understand. He's talking about these 1,000-year cataclysms, the Centelia, is that what he said? Now, I never even heard of that word, because the way I researched it was completely different than what he did, apparently. It's interesting, because I came to something very similar to him, but from a way different angle. It's like we both got to the same treasure or root from like completely different angles coming in. The way I found out about sort of the cataclysms coming was through the Book of Esther. So the Book of Esther, there's a chapter that was removed from the Book of Esther called Mordecai's Dream. It's the last chapter of the Book of Esther. It was removed. It talks about 2 dragons warring for power, of course, over the earth. And what's interesting is this is something that's seen in other stories throughout history. You also had it with King Arthur and Merlin. They also had, I think it was King Arthur had a dream about 2 dragons warring. Very similar to Mordecai's dream. And actually, I think it's exactly the same motif or symbolic you have here. What's going on is one was an evil dragon and one was a good dragon. Okay? And in the chapter, it talks about them warring for power over the world. And what happened was the red dragon, or the evil dragon, was defeated by the white dragon. And this was done through Esther. Esther saved Israel. Okay? So that's what transferred So let me explain this out. So basically 1000 BC to 500 BC was the red dragon time frame. 500 BC to 0 AD was the white dragon time frame because of Esther saving Israel. 0 AD to 500 AD was the red dragon again. I mean, we see this in the New Testament because it says the devil is the god of this world. It doesn't say that actually. Well, it does, but it doesn't. What it says is the god of this age. And I had it open. Where did it go? I don't even know. Got too much stuff open again. At any rate, let's see if I got it around here somewhere. I guess I'll just have to pull it up again. Here we go. Let's pull this up. So, devil, god of this world, common phrase you've heard before. 2 Corinthians 4:4. And let's try it over here. Okay, here. In whom the god of this world, it's actually age. You see this one here? Correct. The word is aeon, where we get the word eon from, or age. It's not world. So, the god of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers. So, it's a 500-year age. The red dragon was over that time. That's why the disciples didn't fare too well after Christ went to the heavens, because, I mean, a lot of them died, obviously. So that it was a red dragon time frame. That's why. And if it was a white dragon time frame, that would have probably not happened the same way. It would have been different. But of course, it makes sense he would have came during that time. He came at the exact right time, where he actually literally conquered the devil when the devil, ironically, was given 500 years over the earth, if that makes any sense. Why? Why is that the case? Because it shows that he truly is the king, Christ is. And that even if the devil had blinded the eyes of the people and the people had accepted, because essentially the dragon is chosen in a sense in sort of a weighing balance based on where people are at. Are the people really evil? Okay, it's going to be the red dragon's time. If the people are starting to go the right direction, white dragon's time. So we actually just went from a red dragon to a white dragon time. End of last year. And I've talked about this numerous times on video if you've watched my channel. We had the exact same celestial season as Esther. She went from the red dragon to the white dragon. We went from the red dragon to the white dragon. 2024, exact same solar eclipse days as the Book of Esther. Now, the devil wanted 1,000 years. He wanted more than 500 years. He wanted 1,000. Why? Because the white dragon had 1,000 years already. The millennial, I call it the millennial kingdom. Some may say no, it wasn't. The medieval ages was 580 to 1580, and it was the white dragon the entire time. And that was what the whole thing with King Arthur was. King Arthur was at the point right before that occurred. He had a dream about the red dragon being defeated by the white dragon. The white dragon represented the Saxons. The red dragon represented Wales. And the white dragon ruled for 1,000 years during the medieval times. Now, what's interesting is he mentioned, Timothy Alberino mentioned a cataclysm, 1,000 years and then a cataclysm, and that we're in one right now. Interestingly, there was a massive cataclysm right after it went from the right after it went from the red dragon to the white dragon of King Arthur's time. There was a massive cataclysm in 536 AD, about 30 years in. There was a massive I think it was a super volcano from what I can tell. Likely in Iceland, according to what they're saying. The earth, not the entire earth, but a large portion of the earth was covered with darkness for about a year. And there was crop failures. Obviously, a lot of people weren't able to eat. Very bad time, okay? Even the bubonic plague, I mean, it was really not a good time. Let's just put it that way. It was a bad time. But it was in the white dragon's time. Okay, it was very early on in it. So we're right now just very early on in the white dragon's time. I think we're going to be seeing a cataclysm too. I think it's the Gog Magog. I think that's what's next. I think that's the cataclysm. And if you think about it, all the nations are aligned for it right now. And I think but again, since we're not in the red dragon's time, he's not going to succeed to get anything to happen during this war. We're talking World War I, okay? He wants to have power again, right? But it's the white dragon's time. He's not going to get it no matter what he does. So even if that happens, it's still going to come out on top. It's going to turn out good afterwards. So that's the thing. So it's going to be used maybe in a sense to correct humanity. So these things suffering, things like this can teach people and bring them to the right place where they're thinking less selfishly, less, you know what I mean? So that kind of stuff can actually be used for correction. So a cataclysm can actually be good, even though it doesn't sound good. It sounds really, really, really bad. It can be used for good. I'm not saying it is good. I'm going to say it can be used for good, right? So I just think it's really interesting that he came to this conclusion that there's these 1,000-year time frames and that there's a cataclysm. And I'm saying, well, there's these 500-year time frames and then we're coming up on a cataclysm. So it's a completely different route. I don't even know if he knows about this dream of Mordecai at the end of the Book of Esther that was removed that talks about two dragons warring. I don't know if he's ever even heard of this stuff that I'm talking about. I'm not sure if he has or not. But again, we were talking about all this last year. I showed all the signs of it. You had 2017 where we had the Revelation 12, of course, sign. I've went through all this stuff. You had the stars align, or the wandering stars align on Christ's birthday in 3 BC. You have the planets or wandering stars aligning for him. And it was in September, right? And then the last time it happened, which was almost 2,000 years later, was September of 2017, which clearly indicates we're in an important time, obviously. And you can see with the picture, it references this in Revelation 12. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon at her feet, crown of 12 stars on her head, with a dragon at her feet. Where is that at? Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 crowns on its head. Let me show you all that in the constellation. Actually, here's the dragon with the 7 crowns right here, zoomed up. But let me show you it at full level. You can see here the moon at her feet, clothed in the sun. The 12 stars are Leo plus the wandering stars, the planets, all aligning above her head as a crown. You have the great red dragon, or serpents, because the word in ancient Greek is serpents, not dragon. And this constellation is called serpents. It said 7 heads and 10 horns, right? Well, what's interesting is this has 7 stars in the head, 7 heads, and 10 stars in the tail, 10 horns. So I think it's just mistranslated. I think it's saying 7 stars in the head, 10 stars in the tail, and it says it has 7 crowns. There's 7 stars in this constellation above its head. Let me show you that. And the name is Corona Borealis. That's an interesting name. Where have we heard that before? That was right. This is 2017. That was right before the whole thing. The crowning achievement of the red dragon. Oh, that's weird. Kind of weird. Didn't work out too well for him, did it? Didn't. So his plans went the wrong direction. Didn't work out. But at any rate, there's that. So I wanted to get into, I mentioned about Darby. We'll get into that last. And actually, no, we'll get into it now, kind of. So the devil didn't want people to know what time frame we're in. He doesn't want people to know what time frame we're in. Why? There is a section in Revelation that talks about this. And almost no one's a lot of people haven't noticed it. It says in Revelation that when the devil gets out of the bottomless pit, he goes forth to deceive all the nations, not some of the nations, not some people. He goes forth to deceive everyone. He goes forth from the bottomless pit to deceive literally everyone. He wants you to not know what is up, what's down, or what's left, what's right. He doesn't want you to know anything. So, interestingly, of course, what's a good way to do that? Let's start a theology in the church that's not correct. That's a good way to do it. Particularly when it leaves you off track and you never grow up and you never really learn anything. Let's get rid of those apocryphal books especially, because you don't want them reading those. But you have here Darby and Schofield, of course, getting funded by Roth, child. Well, that's kind of interesting. Where do we get all this idea of beam me up Scotty? Like everyone's just waiting for it to end. Like, oh, look, it's just going to go to hell in a handbasket. Just beam me out of here, God. I don't want to be around when it happens. That theology is from Darby and Schofield, who was funded by this family right here. Now, why is this the case? Now, let me show you something. If you think that it's going to end at any moment and you just want to get out of here, you're not really thinking about the future. You're not thinking about trying to make a difference. You're not thinking about like trying to change the world for the better, right? You're like, just beam me out of here. Let's get it over with. That mentality is perfectly what the devil wanted. The devil wanted a 1,000-year kingdom. He got 500 years. From 1500, let me show you, from King Henry VII to 2024. Look at King Henry VII's crest. He had a red dragon on it. You see that? King Henry VI, what did he have? So this is a red dragon and a white dog. King Henry VI, what did he have? A white dragon and another white dragon. Isn't that interesting? So it went from the white dragon to the red dragon during King Henry VII's time. He also went and destroyed a bunch of old world buildings exactly when he got in power. Why would he do that? Because it's a different kingdom now. It's a different time. And then that started all the time that we've been living up until 2024. And it hasn't been a what I would call a picnic. Has it? Not really. Particularly the last few years. Have been kind of weird, haven't they? With the whole thing and all the other stuff, right? Oh, Corona Borealis. That's kind of weird. So, of course, what's interesting about it, John Darby here, a lot of people don't know this, but he inherited a castle. This castle that he inherited, this is actually Schofield here, but John Darby, who also is part of this, inherited a castle. And that castle was in his family lineage. There's more than one person that inherited this castle. Let me show you it. So it's called Leap Castle. This is supposed to be the most haunted place in the world, from what many are saying, particularly those that hunt ghosts and all that kind of stuff. Go look on YouTube. You can find it. Eerie hauntings at Leap Castle. It's haunting legends and dark history, horrifying haunting. You see this? Ireland's haunted Leap Castle. So some even claim it's the most haunted of all places. Really interesting because John Darby, the guy who started all the theology that Protestants believe about the end times, inherited that place. That's kind of weird. I don't know. I think that seems a little weird to me. Of course, one of his relatives, about 30 years in, Mildred, was doing seances there, doing a bunch of weird stuff. That's a little strange. I don't know. We see a lot of this kind of stuff. Look at Dr. Kellogg in the 1800s and claiming to be a believer himself while he literally rejected Christ. If you go look into it and actually look in depth. A lot of these teachings, a lot of these ideas in the church came from these people. And they don't even realize it, that perhaps they weren't even believers themselves and they were leading us astray. Okay? So what's interesting about this is they also tell us that what time frame are we in? Well, we haven't had the millennial kingdom, they tell us. They tell us it hasn't happened yet. It's been 2,000 years. Nothing's happened. Nothing's happened in 2,000 years, right? That's what they tell you. Interestingly, and I don't even have it pulled up. The Encyclopedia Britannica has some entries that you might want to see about this. What did they call this? Encyclopedia. Let's see if I can look it up on my notes here. Okay, I found it here. So this, I actually had to save this because it's hard to open on their website because their website's just not the best. Let's just put it that way. So I saved the document. Patristic and medieval millennialism. So apparently during the time of the fall of Rome, right before that, they all believed the millennial kingdom was coming. Kind of weird. Of course, Jerome and St. Augustine didn't like that for some reason. And they did everything they could to get people to stop believing it. Jerome introduced a new set of calculations. So let me read a little bit of this. This is kind of interesting because it will actually show you what's really going on. Because actually, I believe the millennial kingdom already happened. During the Middle Ages, and now we're actually in the time after that. We're in the time at the end where he comes back and judges and everything's over with. We're talking the Gog-Magog time. We already had the millennial kingdom. I think now we're 500 years after that. The final thing's happening. That's what we're entering into now. So while everyone in the church, particularly Protestants, think, no, actually, we still got a millennial kingdom coming, and then we got more after that. I think it's already happened. And you can see it in some of these older books. I've noticed that with the older books is you'll see stuff that you don't see in the newer stuff. Kind of weird. And the Encyclopedia Britannica used to be on your bookshelf, not in the internet, to where you could just delete something you don't like. Yeah, delete. Don't let them see that part. Delete. So, of course, interestingly, the AM calendar, what they call the AM calendar today is actually AM3, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica. And that AM1 was erased. And no one knows about AM1 almost. Almost nobody does. It's kind of interesting. So here you go. However creative and successful with theologians these approaches were, they merely delayed the problem. Despite pagan and Christian belief in Roma Eterna, eternal Rome, the empire would fall. No matter how far away 6000 AM, AD 500, you notice the 6000 AM there? It's talking about the fall of Rome is at 6000 AM. They're telling you today that we live in 5700 AM. Okay, let me show you that. I got too many windows open. 1 second here. Let me pull this over. Where is that at? I got it around here somewhere. 1 second here. Is it here? No. Yeah, here it is. I got it right here. They tell you that we live in 5785. Nope. That's AM3 calendar. AM1 calendar tells you that we live in 7533. That's where we're really at. We're not in 5700. We're in 7533. So let me show you this. So apparently Encyclopedia Britannica knew all about this. No matter how far away 6000 AM at the fall of Rome was, AD 500, seemed from 5700 AD 200, it did not seem so far away to the 5900s, 400s AD. Indeed, the Western Roman Empire faltered just as the year 6000 approached, turning the anti-apocalyptic sabbatical chronology an imperial obstacle to Antichrist exegesis into profoundly apocalyptic ones. At the beginning of the 5th century, AD 59, 59 AM, Jerome and Augustine, perceiving the danger of apocalyptic millennialism, developed new and more stringent ways to oppose it. Jerome introduced a new set of calculations called AM2 that placed the incarnation roughly 300 years earlier, thus allowing Latin chronographers to ignore the advent of year 6000 AM. So apparently, Jerome decided to lie about when Jesus was born, just so people would stop believing in this. Does that sound very saintly to you? He's called Saint Jerome. Kind of weird. Then you got here, at the same time, he heaped ridicule and contempt on millennialists, the believers in foolish tales of earthly delights, gluttony, and sexual promiscuity. Apparently because people were thinking in the millennial kingdom it would be a lot of fun. He didn't like that idea because apparently Jerome, kind of a negative guy, like this, and and I don't know, man. Augustine went further, arguing that neither history nor chronology can be interpreted apocalyptically, and that the millennium was not a future event, but one that already had been set in motion. So he basically turned it into some symbolic hodgepodge stuff. That's what Augustine did. So this is really interesting to me. You look into this, you figure out a lot of stuff, and I don't even have all the stuff pulled up. You can look in these apocryphal books, pseudepigraphical books, Book of Adam and Eve, First Adam and Eve, and Second Adam and Eve, and they all talk about when Jesus will be born. 5,500 AM. It literally says it in the text. And it says that the millennial kingdom starts at 6,000 AM. I think I have it around here somewhere. Let's see if I can go find it really quick. I got the document where I can show all this. Do I even have it open? I don't even know if I have it open. Let me just pull it up. I got it right here. And I've shown this before. I got way too many windows open like usual. So let me show you this really quick. Oh, actually, so this is the guy. His name is Noel. He's the one that put this document together. Unexpected Cosmology is his channel. Go check it out. That's not what I wanted to show you. This here. Let me show you the document that he created. Here's the document. Okay, it's got a lot of these apocryphal texts quoted in it. Let me show you that. Let me show you some of this. All right. So for one, this should help. So for one, you have here. Everyone thinks we're way back here, when we're actually way over here. We're in Satan's little season, actually. Matter of fact, we're right at the end of his little season. His season's almost over. We're like way over here. So a lot of people think we're over here somewhere when we're actually right here. They think we're right here, waiting for to get beamed out of here. And then there's the Millennial Kingdom, when we're actually way over here at the end, right before the final end, New Jerusalem, New Heaven, New Earth. So let me show you this in the documentation of Scripture, or actually not Scripture, but apocryphal text. Well, some are Scripture, some are not. Some are just books that go along with it. Let me show you this. So we have here, I got to go down a little bit. Where is it at? Yeah, here it is. So right here, first Adam and Eve. Oh, Adam, as the tree of the fruit of life that you have asked for, I will not give it to you now, but only when 5,500 years are fulfilled. At that time, I'll give you the fruit of the tree of life, and you will eat and live forever. Okay, notice that. Down here, second Adam and Eve. And Elohim accepted his offering and sent his blessing upon him and upon his children. And then Elohim made a promise to Seth, saying, at the end of the great 5 days and a half, concerning which I've made thee a promise to thee and thy father, I will send my word and save thee and thy seed. The word is the Logos from John, 1 John. Or no, it's John. Is it John or 1 John? Whichever one it is. I think it's John. So at the end of the great 5 days and a half, 1 day is 1,000 years, 5,500 years. Then you got down here, when 5,000 years will be completed, then at the 5,500th year, the beloved Son of the Messiah will come upon the earth, resurrect Adam's body. He will come and be baptized in the river Jordan. Book of Adam, 13:3-5. You see that? Then you even have 6,000 down here, where it talks about Elijah and Enoch will be the olive trees during that time at year 6,000, which is the fall of Rome, saying that they will show up. Then that's what's said in Revelation. So you got all that. So I just wanted to kind of point all that stuff out. Very interesting. At any rate, that's my video. I'm kind of wondering what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.